Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today I'm beyond excited to talk to award-winning and global #1 best-selling author, David Baldacci. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Wonderful having you here. And we're going to talk about Hope Rises today. I almost said Hope Floats. Sorry about that. So Hope Rises. This will be out on the 14th. So can you start the audience off with maybe a little elevator pitch about what your latest book is about?
Yeah, it's actually the second part of a two-book series with a guy named Walter Nash, The Nash Falls, which is the first novel. He's a businessman. Unlike a lot of my other protagonists, he's never been in the military, never been a special agent, never lifted a weight, never fired a gun. He's a businessman. He's done really well, made a lot of money. The only glitch in his whole life was he's been estranged from his father for most of his life. And his father was a Vietnam veteran, and the two just didn't get along. You will find out why in the novel. And the novel opens with Nash going to his father's funeral. His father died from exposure to Agent Orange. They go to the funeral, Nash, his wife, their teenage daughter, and his father's best friend, his nickname is Shock, gets up and gives a eulogy. And during the eulogy, just trashes Walter Nash in front of everyone. And Nash is devastated by that. So he goes home late that night. His family's in bed. He's out in his backyard drinking and trying to process all the stuff that's happened to him. And an FBI agent shows up in the middle of a thunderstorm and tells him, you know, the firm you've been working for, you made all this money. They're actually a criminal organization. And so I'm going to give you a choice. One, you can work with us and help them bring them down. And if you do, you'll lose everything you have. Two, you don't work with us and you'll lose everything you have. Those are your choices.
Wonderful options there.
Absolutely. So Nash makes his choice, and then that runs the gamut of lots of things during the course of Nash Falls. And then we come to Hope Rises. So he has totally and completely changed who he is. He's gone from Walter Nash, mild-mannered businessman, to Dillon Hope, who is none of those adjectives. And Dillon Hope is playing a very dangerous game. He needs to bring down this woman named Victoria Steers, who runs this organization that's gotten him in all this trouble and has cost him a lot, his family, his daughter. And he's now in that organization. And they don't know who he is. His appearance has changed drastically. But it really is a sort of a cat and mouse game now. And I loved how, the Nash Falls set up Hope Rises. And a lot of people, when Nash Falls ended and they saw it didn't really end, I got a lot of emails, like 10,000 emails that came in and said, what the hell is this? We have to buy another book. And I said, please understand that when you read Hope Rises, you'll see why I needed a full 400 pages to bring this baby home. And I could not have done it in 20 pages at the end of Nash Falls. And I think you'll enjoy the fact that there's actually two books for you to read instead of one.
It is excellent. So in Hope Rises, when you introduce us to Nash here, because I didn't read Hope Falls, so this was my first introduction to this character. And he is sort of at the bottom of his emotional depth. At least that's what I got from it. And he plays his cat and mouse game really, really well. You as the author gave us so many cat and mouse scenarios from beginning to end in this book. And it was so well done, David. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great for me to put those scenes together too. And this one, I really had to layer it. I couldn't do everything at once. So I had to layer it, let the relationship grow. The readers, I think, will be surprised the direction that a relationship between these characters take, given what's happened between them in the past. Most readers will think, okay, I know how this is going to end. I don't know. You don't really know how this is going to end. I wanted to show, obviously, the physicality of the man who's never had to rely on his physical strength before, and rely on skills that until a short time ago, he didn't even possess those skills. And I think what I wanted to do with Nash Falls and Hope Rises was to show, here's Walter Nash. Guess what? He did everything he was supposed to do to achieve the American dream. Everything that our parents and grandparents told us you were supposed to do, right? You go to school, you get a good education, you work hard, and you finally got it. And then nothing you did wrong, it's all taken away from you. And I think a lot of people these days can relate to that. They did everything right and they've got nothing to show for it. But humans are incredibly resilient. We get knocked on our ass, and guess what? We get back up again, and we find a way forward. And I just think that, Nash represents a lot of that. And I wanted to build, obviously, a great thriller. I wanted to build that lesson in, at least that notion in for people to say, boy, he went through some dark stuff, but he came out the other end, still breathing. Maybe I've got a shot.
That's right. And I think also, what you said is so true, because we fight the good fight, most of us do, and we expect to get a reward for it. But for some people, that reward never comes. Or just the opposite happens. They get knocked down and walked on and trampled over. And Nash is certainly an every man's hero. I don't think anyone will not like Nash, seriously.
He's a good guy who's desperately trying to do the right thing. He's thrust into a situation where there are nearly no good choices. And no matter which way he turns, he's going to run into a wall that he's going to have to climb over. And even with the best of intentions, this could all go sideways really, really fast. And then on top of that, then he's got to the point where his emotions are totally confused. He thought,
yes, you definitely threw us a switch there on that one.
I know where I'm going, but now all of a sudden I'm not sure where I'm going. And who in life hasn't been through that? We've all been through that.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you the same thing I told Mark Graney when he was on Out with Dan. I got to travel the world and never leave my apartment. So it was, I will confess that I know the Western Hemisphere very well, but when it comes to Asia, I couldn't have told you where Myanmar was if my life depended on it. And I didn't even realize it was formerly Burma. I knew if you said, where is Burma, I might know where that is. But anyway, so have you actually been to Myanmar?
I have not been to Myanmar, which is a very challenging place to go. The government there is not stable, as you probably learned during the course of reading the novel. The government doesn't even control most of the country. There are probably like 15 different factions, and makes getting around quite difficult. But with that said, I did enough research that I could really put you in the moment.
Yes.
I wanted you to understand that this was a place where the rule of law did not apply, and you had to watch your back all the time. And all you wanted to do was get in and then get out if you possibly could. And that's what I wanted to do. And I've always found with the research, particularly with geographical locations, it's important to place you in the moment, but then you got to pull back on that throttle, because sometimes you're so tempted just to lay a bunch of stuff out there that the reader doesn't need. I call it sort of being a writer is prostitute. You just want to hear yourself write. You're paid by the word and by the. So I tried my best to keep it a minimum, but I wanted you to know that you were there.
Well, and the reason I asked had you been is because I really did feel as if you had been there. And because I am a person that does a little research. So of course I pull out the phone or the iPad and I start looking up Myanmar. And I didn't even realize that Mandalay was part of Myanmar. I didn't know where Mandalay was. I actually thought that was in China. I will tell you that I have an education, but sometimes when it comes to geography, it's not a very good one. So, but it looks like an interesting concept of a country to visit. With the unsettled government, I don't want any part of that. But I have been to countries that had unstable governments before. So, it depends on how badly you want to go, I guess.
Exactly right. Yeah. So for now, people can read the book and they get sort of some insights into the country without having to go there and worry about getting out.
Right. Totally agree. Well, and I have been to New Orleans, which also figures into this as well. So that I've been to New Orleans a lot, including 2 weeks ago. So
the Garden District is beautiful. And I chose New Orleans. I've been there many times. I have a lot of friends who live down there, and I thought it was a perfect place. I don't think anybody would have suspected that would have been the chosen location. So
well, and I there's a lot to be said about New Orleans and the fact that you can actually go and hide there. And that is certainly possible. It's not what most people do. Most of us go to be seen, but you can actually, Southerners are fairly good at keeping secrets.
They are.
They keep to themselves. I'm from North Carolina, and I know you're from Virginia. And we typically well, we always know what the neighbors are doing, but having said that, we're usually pretty good at keeping secrets as well. So I think you could actually go to New Orleans and hide out.
Yes.
So in this, Walter has a very difficult relationship with his dad. You also visited that with Victoria and her mom. Is it Mesuya?
Yeah, Masuya.
And so what about that was something that you wanted to visit in both characters?
So when you bring a character to the page and there's something extraordinary about them, it could be extraordinary for a good reason or a bad reason. I always look to motivation, and I also look to how that person was crafted. And I think we all know, particularly those of a certain age, that parents are very integral to the development of their children. It could be for good and it could be for bad. Usually it's for good. When I'm building a character like Victoria Steers, I built her as an extraordinarily complex person. And that doesn't just happen by happenstance or even serendipity. There has to be some firm motivations and reasons behind it. And her mother was the primary reason. Her father was a secondary reason. And Rocco, who was her beloved nanny, was sort of the third leg of the stool. And those people together delivered unto the world a very, very confused and complicated person in Victoria Steers. I wanted the people to understand that. And so I gave you Victoria Steers as this ruthless person in the very, very beginning who you think I know what makes her tick. And then I took the onion that represented her and I started to unpeel the layers and hope rises. And I think that applies to every person. I don't like it when, to use the old cliche, judging a book by its cover. It's never a smart thing to do. Everybody has layers to them. And you may think that all you're seeing is the surface of a person. There's always depth behind that surface. To understand who they are, why they are what they are, you have to get beyond that. And so with Victoria Steers, it was really important for me to show those three influences that she had growing up, most especially that of her mother.
So it's rare that I end up hating a character. I mean, obviously, if they're despicable, I do. But her mother is someone that is just, there is seemingly no redeeming quality. And of course, when you get a tyrant for a parent, it does affect a child. And of course, oftentimes tyrants are tyrants because they have something they fear in life or they feel like they didn't get in life. So I just really thought that you crafted those characters so well. And, when Victoria, the story starts with her positioning in the story, we, the reader, find her to be one way because you, the author, gave us such wonderful descriptions of her childhood, of where she's going in this life and how controlling she is. But then as we see her go along, we realize as you peel back those onion layers that she's a very, very different person once you get inside, if she'll let you inside, which is always, I think, a difficult thing for some people to let others in.
It very much is. I think that, again, I've written this story so that so many people can relate to what's inside of the story. I'm not saying that people, everybody knows people like Victoria Steers, but we know people who they are cloistered within themselves. They are reserved. They don't like to talk about themselves. And you have to understand what is behind that. Is it for a good reason? Is it for a bad reason? Is it because they feel vulnerable and fragile? Is it because they've been hurt in the past? So that's what makes me curious about people. And the whole heart and soul of A Hope Rises really is a relationship between Walter Nash, Dillon Hope, and Victoria Steers that really drives the entire novel. There's lots of other subplots and lots of stuff going on. But if you wanted to go to find the beating heart, it's those two people. And I think what I wanted to show was that you could have two people who probably should have been diametrically opposed for the entire length of the book, who hated and despised, distrusted, and wanted to destroy the other. And for them to reach sort of common ground, I think it's hopeful for the world.
Totally agree.
Yeah, that we can get beyond those things and we actually can agree on some stuff. And that was another theme. Thrillers are wonderful because you have so much going on in them. You can sneak in little moments that people may be able to analogize to their own lives, that they might stop and think, well, if those two can do it.
That is true. And I also think that, Walter is such a loving character in a lot of ways. And there's one line in there that he says he tapped into his old sentimental self. And I really found that that is true. I mean, Walter sees the good in others, or tries to, and he also tries to bring out the good in others. And you also give him a wide range of, well, I don't know that it's wide range, but some really close friends that he works with and who really look out for him and try to protect him as well as they can. But he's got himself really dug into a very deep hole.
He does. I put him through a lot. I mean, a lot of challenges, and a lot of times he could have died during the course of both novels. It's funny, he had a difficult childhood as well, with his father. And that goes to show that people respond to challenges differently. So he could have come out of that with his father, being an overbearing father of his own. He could have been very different with his daughter. He could have been cruel and hateful, or aloof. But, he was sort of that guy that never could really open up even to his own family, but he was always there for them when they needed him. He wanted to be around them, but he was also wanted to be within himself. And I get that. I get that totally, because I'm like that some ways too. My kids grew up knowing that at some point during a social event, Dad is going to disappear and go off to be by himself and be in his own little world. And I saw Nash as that. And you take someone like Victoria Steers, who grew up under, her mother's tutelage and cruelty. Her response was different. But even so, there was still that kernel of the little girl that she had once been. So I don't think that there are very few people, either in real life or in fiction, who are totally irredeemable. People can come back from a great fall.
I agree with you. So did I hear right earlier, this is only a 2-book series?
Well, at this point, I'll never say never, because I have to tell you, these two characters have really struck a chord with me. And I poured a lot into both of them, developing them. So I can't say that they're not going to be back. They were special to me. And I know that this story is sort of done, but they could have more juice in them later on.
Well, I will say, David, that as a reader, it was very obvious to me when I read this that you really did care for these two characters a lot. I mean, you gave us fully formed characters, which is always so much fun to read. I mean, sometimes an author gives us just surface characters. They sometimes serve a purpose, but these were with such depth and understanding that I know you must have spent a lot of time with them. Are you a plotter, or are you an organic writer?
I'm more organic than anything else. I've tried outlining, and 9 times out of 10, nothing I had in the outline ended up in the novel. I think I just need to be in the moment. It's really hard for me to outline things that a character is supposed to do before I even meet them on the page. Meeting characters on the page is critical. It's really like, how do you know you're supposed to marry someone if you've never met them for real, right? So I just, I let it go on the page and I see where I go with it.
I love it. Gives me a little glimmer of hope over here, David. So I want to switch gears a little bit. You and your wife started Wish You Well Foundation. Will you tell the audience what that is?
Yes, we've had the foundation for about 25 years, and what we do is we fund literacy organizations and programs across the country. Over the last quarter century, we've funded programs in virtually every state in the country. And we also help those organizations network with one another to bring them together so they can be more effective for their different areas and their different specialties. I long ago learned, I grew up, in Virginia, and when I was born, racial segregation was still legal. And I was told that's the way the world should be ordered. And the only thing that saved me were books. Like you, I was able to, as Mark Twain once said, travel is fatal to prejudice. I couldn't travel outside of Virginia as a kid, but I traveled the world without a plane ticket or a passport through books. And that takes the boogeyman effect away, the fear of the other, and they tell you you're supposed to be afraid of that person. And I'm like, nope, I've read about them in lots of books. They're just like me. So what other argument do you have? Because that one failed miserably. And so we want everyone in this country to read at an acceptable level, because not only does it make you a better person, it allows you to realize your socioeconomic potential. If you can't read at a high level in this country, you're never going to reach your potential as a person. You're not going to be an asset to society. You're going to be a drag on society. Nothing having to do with you. People have to be given the opportunity. And we also recently, last year, we funded a very large funding for two organizations in Virginia, the Library of Virginia and my undergraduate university, Virginia Commonwealth University, to come together to form an institute for civil discourse. So that we go across the Commonwealth of Virginia, giving venues and platforms and opportunities in teaching for people to be able to come and sit down face to face and reach common ground on important issues. So that when they go to the voting booths, they can vote in an educated and informed way, and having reached common ground with people who have different perspectives and ideas about how the country should move forward. And we hope it'll give you a model for the rest of the country, because I know that if you sit down face to face and get off your phones and get off of social media and talk to people across the table, you're probably going to find out you agree on a lot more than you disagree on. And we've looked at the problem in this country for a long time now. And if you don't fix the foundation of a house, I don't care how much you do on the second story, the house is still going to fall. And guess what? We are the foundation of this country. You know, for better or worse, the people are the foundation, and we have to fix that issue so that you don't wait until the night before an election to go on a podcast and let them tell you who you're supposed to vote for. You know, you will be fully informed about this, and you will have reached out. So, you know, we'll have venues and we'll have programs like, well, we'll have a town hall where there are no politicians present. It's just voters sitting down and talking about important issues. And we're very excited about it, and we hope that it can make a difference.
Well, fantastic. And let us know when your governorship or presidential campaign launches, David. Come on now. Because, you know, I agree with you. I occasionally, I'll meet people and because I do a podcast, I say, you know, what are you reading? Oh, I don't read. And I'm like, wow, really? I mean, it breaks my heart every time someone says that, because I think of the potential that they too could go to Myanmar and never leave home. I mean, it's just, and I agree with you wholly that once we talk to people, really talk to them, we hear their concerns and their fears and their hopes. And those are the things we need to build up rather than just tearing everyone down. So Absolutely. Now I've gone and got political on us. Sorry.
I just consider we both of us have gone and gotten human on us.
Yeah. Well, precisely. And I love being human. So I love it. So David, thank you so much for being a guest. And I just love this book. I cannot recommend it enough. And I look forward to chatting with you on the next one.
Sounds good. Thank you, Dan. Take care.
You too. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at OutWithDan.com, on Twitter at OutWithDan, and on Instagram and Facebook at Go Out with Dan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.